there, and welcome to the Curious Collective podcast, conversations designed for the veteran and first responder community to bring awareness to those holistic practices that help us live our best life. So tap into the wisdom and knowledge of our guests to heal, transform, and live as your true soulful self. Listeners, with us today, we have the amazing Josh, who's come all the way from Arizona over in the USA. So welcome, Josh.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
What we would love, and the way we always start our podcast, is just for you to introduce yourself and what it is that you're doing in the world right now.
Okay, well, my name is Josh Grandinetti. I am a fire captain for a small rural fire department here in Arizona. I've been in the fire service for about 14 years. I've been a captain for 5 of those years, and I've been a paramedic for 12 of those years. I've recently had an injury at work, so it's given me a little bit of time at home. And I've been a practicing meditator for about 8 years. And it didn't take me long, probably within the first year or so of my practice, before I thought, first responders are missing this practice here, right? But mindfulness meditation isn't something you can just declare yourself ready to teach. So I had a lot to learn. So I just continued with my practice, but I had this festering idea to someday try to bring this practice into first responders' lives to try to help. And this injury has given me the opportunity to make that a reality and take this time to not only spend more time with my wife and kids, but build this meditation platform to help first responders, hopefully in America, but all over the world, because it really is just a basic practice that does so much for us in just such a simple way once it's understood. So that's kind of a little bit about me. That's kind of who I am and what I'm up to. So
Yeah, I love that. And this is why we're on this conversation today, because I was on Instagram and I'm like, who is this guy? And because the way you've presented yourself and the way you've launched yourself into this, and by being in this space where you've had this time to do this, is in a really potent way. So I feel like in the future, this is really going to gain some momentum. And I love that you said worldwide, because these first responders need you worldwide. And yes, definitely start in your own backyard, but can definitely see this going worldwide. So with the meditation practice and your own personal practice, what did you find that it changed within your own life?
well, look, I'll start with just kind of what I was saying earlier about very quickly what I realized during mindfulness meditation sits, what first responders or what myself could do professionally with this little skill, right? It's not to say it was easy, when you're wandering in this space of meditation, as a lone practitioner, you kind of have to swim through a fairly deep reservoir of ancient spiritual practices that can get a little different, a little out there, right? So you kind of have to find your way through this path. And luckily, mindfulness is the term you're going to start to hear more and more, because that's kind of the West's attempts to pull from the Eastern traditions what's valuable about meditation and what's scientifically defensible about what we can teach and what we can do for ourselves using this simple technique, right? So I say all that to bring in that, my first couple of meditation sits, it didn't take me long before I'd be sitting there trying to just follow sound, and a practitioner would ring a bell or a gong, and I would jump just a little bit differently than the other people around me, and I just noticed that because of our dispatch tones and because the way we are to respond to whatever emergencies coming our way, we're more reactive and responsive to loud stimulus. So that was one thing that allowed me within my job very quickly to be much more calm after a dispatch tone came around, not be festered with either anxiety or emotion or an imagination that's already going wild. I
Mm.
could just be with the dispatch tone, move forward with a
Stay
curious mind.
present.
Yeah, and not get overcome by any other baggage that might otherwise be distracting you in the mind when you're trying to respond. So I mean,
Mm.
that's one small way, but then there are many others too. I mean, I can go very deep into what I feel like first responders can extract from this basic practice, but I go into so much more of that at Foundation Fortified. And it's so far, I haven't, it's all out there for everybody to discover. I want to build this community of people who do practice and who do find it valuable within their lives. So
Absolutely. And I love when you spoke there into is like, navigating that path, finding that way. And I feel like it's everyone's a little bit different. So what works for one person in a meditation practice may not necessarily work for another. And just to keep exploring and discovering that for yourself.
well, I'll pick up what you just said there and kind of, mildly disagree, but try to agree with what I think you're trying to say
Yeah.
there. Mindfulness practice is a very simple practice. Now, there are many ways we can do different techniques to try to help us do what we're trying to do at all moments here. But all mindfulness is trying to accomplish is being aware of your moment to moment experience without judgment. This need to ethically code everything in our experience. This sip of coffee either tastes good or bad. The air in this room is either too hot or too cold. This chair is either too, right? We apply ethical judgments to every one of our experiences, and that's one of the things we want to try to rid ourselves of during mindfulness, and indeed our lives, if we're going to limit this concept of suffering that we impose on ourselves, right?
Mm.
But that is to say, you know it really is about the instructor that you find, I
Mm.
believe. I believe that some of your best instructors in life can be bad instructors, don't get me wrong. But finding someone who understands how to speak to you and how to speak to your problems, your concerns, your lifestyle is hugely important in this practice. And that is a big component of what Foundation Fortified is. I mean, I am a first responder.
Mm.
I've been a captain for a long time.
Mm.
I know what it's like to have to balance these two lives that we live. And one life over here, you have your goals, but they fade because you have other responsibilities, and then you get off shifts. You got to pick up this personal responsibility that's developed in the time you're gone. And it's this complicated dance that we all do as responders. And,
Mm.
and mindfulness practice really can help. I consider myself very fortunate if I was a qualified enough instructor to be valued in our community as a.
Yeah, absolutely. And as well, how I'm seeing it, I love how you reframed that for me, is for those that are totally new to this and looking for that way to flow between and create balance in their life and come back to the self, to be initiated into this space by someone that is culturally aware of the first responder space, but also having experience, life experience, your own practice can guide them in to get them to the point where they then don't even need guided meditation. They can just drop in and create their own practice, and however that looks for them. It might be a walking meditation or to music or by the water, or yeah, I see
Yes,
what you're saying.
it's absolutely true. There is something, as I still participate in guided meditations myself. I consider myself, a little further along the path. If there is a path, you'll get deeper into practice and find that there is no true path, and the whole system starts, right. But you know from the beginning, from the start, there is this goal that you want to achieve, right? There is this, I'm starting here, sitting here, closing my eyes, trying to have this experience, and I want something to change, right? Well, having a good instructor can help show you how you're already doing it wrong here.
Yeah.
And that's really what a good instructor is going to do, is not show you how to meditate, but show you all the ways you inhibit your own progress
Mm.
through mindfulness practice, right? And there are so many ways our careers lend themselves toward deep understanding of meditation. Let me tell you, like having good situational awareness
Yeah.
lends itself very well to opening the mind and being aware of what's arising in our awareness and our consciousness.
Mm.
But the traumas that we've all experienced, the difficulties, driving past a common intersection in your community where you've seen tragedy happen,
Mm.
or focusing on the breath, where just earlier that evening you might have seen somebody struggling to breathe, or heard somebody on the phone gasping for their these kind of things happen to us as first responders within mindfulness. And that's where I believe Foundation Fortified is really going to be helpful for first responders, because in mindfulness practice, avoiding suffering is a common teaching.
Yeah.
But first responders have kind of invented this new form of suffering that humans haven't. really grappled with yet. And the way that suffering comes on is this, right? In normal human affairs, something happens in our experience that we have to respond to. And that either causes us to be sad, angry, or any combination, right? And it can be as simple as we don't like the way our food tastes if we're, immature in the moment, or it can be something significant, right? As we all know. But when you're mindfully aware of each moment throughout your experience, you can begin to see that what you're experiencing as things are happening are usually just a story that you're telling yourself. It's a narrative that you're building upon your mind, keeping you distracted from what you actually want to be maintaining your attention. Does that make sense?
100%.
And this is where mindfulness practice is going to help with that, but also our PTSD, our burnout, our depression, things like that will come up during our mindfulness practice as first responders, indeed humans. But because we have this need to respond to suffering as part of our job, part of our career, to influence change within our communities, and we impose this on ourselves, this isn't something that I feel like most meditation instructors are going to be able to understand, although they might be able to help you feel and experience your emotion. They're not going to know what it's like to continue to put yourself in situations where you're going to be exposed to these. Does this make sense?
Yeah,
And that's why I feel like
absolutely.
mindfulness practice for first responder needs to become more part of the norm.
Yeah.
We're not asking for hours a day or even an hour a day like we've all kind of grown accustomed to physical exercise. We take our recruits at an early age and we tell them, hey, take care of that heart, right? Hey, take care of those lungs. And we do this so that they live productive careers and hopefully long, healthy lives. But with the mind, we have yet to really develop training, but it's been here for 2,000 years, right? We just haven't gotten around to it because of the religious dogmatism that comes with the practice. And I hope at Foundation Fortified, we could sever that difference and really, really bring to first responders what's fruitful about the
Yeah,
practice.
and provide clarity around, that's a story as well, right? And bringing
Yes,
it back to the self. Yeah.
indeed.
So yeah,
And
I
I
love
hope
how
to
you
get,
worded that.
yeah, I hope to get more deep into practices like that. So far what I've been up to, I appreciate the kind words, by the way. I've been up to getting my certifications as needed to be able to, credibly teach this practice. And then I've been busy building the platform. I've had this curriculum built for a long time, so that was easy to extract and put on paper. But being able to get the name and the logo and put it out there and find followers and find people to get the movement going, that's now where we're at in this process. So everything on YouTube or Facebook, is all, that's kind of our first module that I built so far.
Yeah.
It's kind of what I'm kind of calling the recruit module,
Yeah, nice.
right? You can find training on there. You
Mm.
can find some lifestyle videos where I try to blend your careers and your mindfulness practice in a way that hopefully you can take your practice from off the cushion into the real world where it matters. Um, I say all the time, you can meditate 8 hours a day and still be a jerk,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
still be a jerk. What good is it doing? So hopefully we take these practices off the cushion into our life, and that's where I hope I can help with the lifestyles. And you also find guided sessions there that I'm rolling out about 1 or 2 a week at the present moment. Many of them are built just with first responders in mind
I
and the
love
struggles.
that so much. So great. And I'm looking forward to seeing the evolution of how this grows. So keep up the great work. The question I've got for you now is, we would love to hear, as part of this podcast, we talk into our own personal experiences of what actually brought you to the point where you sought out or found the meditation practice, what was happening in your life at the time.
It's a really good question, and I wish I had a definitive answer. But the answer is just, I wanted to go to school after high school to be a neuroscientist, a brain scientist, right? And I got clasped by the grasp of first responder. She was the coolest person I'd ever met. She was a firefighter at Tempe, and I just fell in love with her. She just taught a CPR and first aid class. That's all I was there to do, was learn how to do that from her. And I just couldn't help but look forward to the class. And I thought the career had something to do with it, so I moved to firefighting. Um, I say that to stay. I say all that to say that studying the mind has always been kind of a hobby of mine anyway.
Mm.
You know, ever since I was a very little kid, I've always been curious about how this black box and this thing inside my head creates, you know, all this in real time, and how that happens, and how I seem to not be the one doing it. You know what I mean? What's
Yeah, it's
going on here?
amazing.
So that question has always been kind of at the core of who I am as a kid. I remember seeing oh boy, I want to say it was a Nirvana disc. And there was this Buddhist monk on there who was, you know, on fire. Half his body was on fire. It was a shocking image when I was a kid. But that image kept coming up in my life, and I finally looked it up, and it was a Buddhist monk protesting the Vietnam War.
Mm.
And you know, that never got out of my head. Right. Not that I'm intending to do anything that dramatic.
Yeah.
But you know, the meditation and mindfulness has just always kind of anytime it was in my vicinity, it always caused me
Pulled
pause
you
and
in.
pay attention to it. And I guess I finally got to the point around 8 years ago where I said, well, like, might as well give it a try, you
Yeah.
know. And I guess that's really what I'm hoping first responders do, is say, you know, hey, this guy looks somewhat approachable. He looks like someone I, you know, and it doesn't have to be a practice where we're shaving our heads, you know what I mean? And it really is just a simple
Drinking
practice, it's a
Kool-Aid.
private practice, you know. You can do it in your bunk room, you could do it in
Mm.
your bedroom, you can do it in a group, you could do it anywhere, you know.
Yeah,
It really is just a
absolutely, you
simple,
can.
it's just simply training the mind to be
Mm.
more resilient and more open toward other people, toward community, toward love and distribution of emotion. It's just a beautiful practice. It's very elegant and simple, and I hope we as first responders can get to the point where we value it in the way that I found personal. So
Oh, 100%. And I do love listening to you talk about it. Even, I was speaking to an Australian firefighter here this week about incorporating it into the actual recruit training, as part of not only the mindfulness side of breath work, but also the performance sort of breath preservation style of breath work for when you're going into an incident, to conserve your oxygen and all sorts of things like that. So,
mhm.
it will be great to see you create this movement of all these inspired, curious minds wanting to make
Yeah,
change.
I'm hoping here within the next few months to you know, if I gain a little bit of traction, I'm hoping to poll departments to find a department that would be willing to have me come out and take their academy recruits, whether it's a police or fire department or a combination of both. And I'd really like to, you know, take two groups and, you know, give me your recruits for 30 minutes while you guys are doing PT a couple times, and let me do some vital tests, and then see who's more resilient towards stress after a few months or years. But you know, I have to build out the study, I have to build out the idea. But I'm gonna hope to start finding support, to start putting pen to paper on like actual, because we have the scientific data and research out there, right?
Yeah.
But first responders love everything specifically catered to us.
Yeah.
So we're
Yeah.
going to want to see first responder studies.
Because it
So I'm
is
hoping.
unique. It's not something you can,
Mhm.
class like you were talking into earlier in the podcast. It is quite unique and different. So I am looking forward to seeing the results of these studies. And, hopefully you get some little Padawans that, want to come and help and support you to do this work. So it's not just you doing it all.
Yeah, you know, I so far I love everything about it. I love being able to put out what I know is valuable, and I just hope that people do find it valuable. One of the ones I wrote for first responders, specifically, one of my guided sessions is called Ticket Booth. You know, that's a great place to start if you're new to mindfulness meditation. You aren't doing much in that one, but having to listen and imagine me carry you through a scene, you know. And that's a great place to start if you're new to it. Um, but mindfulness doesn't have to be spooky. It doesn't have to be surreal.
Mm.
It really is just something that we can take on as first responders, understanding that a heart that is cared for at an early age is going to be more resilient toward trauma later in life. This has just been here this whole time, and we neglect it at our own peril as a community. Full stop.
Mm.
Full stop. People are more resilient during mindfulness training to PTSD, depression, anger, poor coping mechanisms, yada. It goes on and on. And once you become a disciplined meditator, it does begin to become obvious within your own personal life why that is. It does become more obvious that something that sitting in traffic that would normally make you lose your mind, for some reason, just bounces off of you in a way that it's almost hard for you to grapple with. Like, why is this not bothering me like
Yeah.
it normally
Yeah.
should? You kind of just appreciate the almost like physical exercise. One day you just kind of feel better, but you never wake up sick and go to bed sick and wake up healthy. Same thing with mindfulness. We never go to bed mentally deranged and anxious and wake up resilient and ready to take on the world. It's a slow process, just like anything else. But I really appreciate the kind words. I do hope that the community is ready for the practice. That's the other thing. I can
We're
be a great
calling in
instructor.
all the curious minds. That's what this podcast is about. We're going to stretch this far and wide, and we're together with the message of Josh is out there doing this amazing work. He's got a platform. All the links will be wherever this podcast is. And we are calling out to every single one of you that's curious to check this out, explore this for yourself, because it can create significant difference in your life.
Yes, thank you so much. And to anybody that is listening, I just want to thank you for taking the time. I know you are busy as a first responder. I do hope Foundation Fortified can also grow and do um, meditations and programs for supporters of first responders as well, wives and children. I have two young
Mm.
boys, an 11-year-old, 9-year-old. And like every other parent out there, we're destined to torture our kids with our own hobbies, right? So I try to get my kids to be mindful with me, and the resources out there for kids in mindfulness is it's very good for beginners, but there's very little for developing children.
I
Very little
agree.
for developing mindfulness practice in
Mm.
kids. And Foundation Fortified is going to ensure that as we grow, it is also applicable to our families of first responders who are there to support first responders go through what we have to go through in order to foresee our successful careers. So I do intend to open up programs for families as well. So
I love what you're doing. I am supporting you so much from afar. And
thank you so much.
I look forward to having you on the podcast again this time next year, talking about all the amazing things you've done in the last 12 months. So
Please do. Please do. I'd love to come back on. Absolutely. It's really a pleasure. This is my third interview. And Foundation Fortified's really been kind of going strong for only about a month. I mean, if you go back to our initial meditations that I was putting up just a month and a half ago, you'll see a difference in quality just with the visuals and everything, you know what I mean? So there's
we
already been
learn
a
and
difference.
grow.
Yeah, we learn and grow, and that's kind of been fun. It's kind of been fun to be so excited about this idea that I want to be putting content out, and then I
Yeah.
meet the creator like yourself who sends me 2 or 3 things. It's like, okay, your project is great and I need to help you. Here's 3 things you need to do right now to help yourself. And I do those 3 things, and lo and behold, they were right. So
Yeah.
the community's already been very open and accepting of my mission to help first responders. There's many other organizations out there built to help first responders, and mindfulness meditation does seem to be a new one on the
Yeah.
block. It does seem to be different. I seem to be existing in this space where the sky's the limit for finding meditators or mindfulness practitioners who are interested. So
Mm.
I do hope that I feel like I'm interviewing. I feel like I'm interviewing for a very personal journey, and I hope that I hope that I can do it for them. So
Heck yes. Thank you so much for your time with us on the Curious Collective, Josh, and we look forward to seeing you again in the future. Katie out.